All right, I think most people have joined already, so that's great. Again, we're going to go for an hour here with a webinar about DevOps in larger companies and legacy environments. My name is Fredrik Viljesjö, and I work here as a trainer and partner at We Are Movement. We're providing both advisory services and training in the Stockholm and Nordic region. And with me today, I'm very happy to introduce Marc Rix. And Marc, I guess that you can introduce yourself. You're in the call, right?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, great.
Means we're off to a good start, right?
Perfect.
That's great. So yeah, brief introduction. The slide speaks for itself, although it's not entirely accurate. I'm Marc Rix. I am a SAFe fellow, but I'm no longer a DevOps product manager. Well, I guess I kind of am, but that's not my official title anymore. I recently moved on to the framework team. So I'm a member of the framework team at Scale Agile and a SAFe fellow. And I've been doing DevOps in really, really big environments, legacy environments, big enterprises, government agencies for the last 6 or 7 years or so. So really excited about this conversation. I think it's very appropriate and can't wait to get started. Yeah,
we're very, very happy to have you here. It's a bit different. I mean, we usually do more like this after work type of meetups with maybe a beer and a sandwich and stuff. But of course, we now have to move a bit more online and webinars. But also an opportunity with that is, of course, to have people like you to come and talk to us, which we're very happy to have you here.
That's great. So am I. Well, you guys feel free to grab a glass of wine or whatever. I'm in the US and on the West Coast, so it's morning for me. And it's a little too early to start day drinking.
Yeah, a little bit too early, yeah. Yep, so it's free for anyone in the call to drink and eat whatever they want to. Great. All right, yeah, I think actually, so I wanted to start out with like the most basic question actually, like what is DevOps? Maybe some people who join this call has worked with DevOps for 10 years or so. Other people might just be interested in the concept, heard the word, but not really know what it is. So I was thinking we could just talk a little bit about the basics, and we prepared a few slides here that we can talk around, and we'll see where the conversation goes. And if anyone has a question, I guess it's appropriate to just put it in the chat for now, and we'll see when it fits to address. And of course, in the end, I guess we can open up more for a general discussion. So right, so let's kick it off with one of the basic slides here. So what do DevOps come from? So what Marc, what's your history with DevOps? When did DevOps sort of enter into your life?
So I became a DevOps guy in about 2014, and I was a VP of engineering at a large financial institution here in the United States, and I was in charge of the Agile transformation. We brought in SAFe, and things were going really well. You know, we launched a few release trains, and after about 6 months, we noticed that the teams were running faster. We were much more connected to the business and connected to our customers, and we were building software faster. But we also realized that we weren't actually getting that product to market any faster. So things were getting stuck in integration and testing and the release management process. So we needed an answer to that too. That's when my partners and I, who were leading the transformation, decided that we needed to bring in a DevOps component. And I knew that I had to get involved in DevOps at that point because it was a critical component to continuous delivery in a large environment.
At that point, I mean, so DevOps is it coming from more like the example that you're mentioning? You see that dev people are not really getting along with ops people, and you see that sort of divide in this slide, of course, as well. That maybe you have different views on what's important in life. getting things out there or getting it stable into production. And I think that most of us who are involved in the DevOps community has seen that firsthand, as you say.
Right.
So that's sort of where it all comes from.
Yeah, I think what people need to remember about the history of DevOps is it was born from a people problem, not an automation problem or a tooling problem. It was we have this development silo and we have this ops silo, and the people in dev are from Mars and the people from ops are from Venus, and they don't know how to get along. They just don't speak the same language. They have different goals, different objectives. The folks on the dev side are always moving in fast forward mode, and the ops people are like, hey, let's pause, let's not go too fast. We need to make sure that things are stable and secure. So these opposing forces in dev and ops kind of produced friction in the delivery stream, reducing time to market and causing a lot of clash in that value stream. So really the whole idea of DevOps was born out of bringing these two worlds closer together so that dev and ops could collaborate more effectively. And then over there on the right-hand side of the chart, we expand that story. It's not just about dev and ops. It's about everybody in the value stream, because everybody matters, right? Let's talk about dev and ops, but let's also talk about security and compliance and architecture. Everybody who has a hand in moving the product out the door and delivering value.
Yeah, and I think that also is central. If you sort of knew that you hear dev and ops and you get the feeling that it's only about development or operations. And I think it's really crucial to, as you say that we're tearing down silos in general here, right? That's the idea, and it started maybe with dev and ops, but we all need to be here. And maybe that's sort of a segue into the next concept of the value streams and like the focus on flow in DevOps. And maybe that's something that might be surprising to people, but it's really the core in understanding how to unlock your value streams. So what?
Yeah, this value stream component gets lost in the conversation a lot of times. Usually when we think about DevOps or DevSecOps, we're thinking about the tooling and the hardcore engineering underneath it, right? It's what those people over there do. It's the engineers, it's the operators, it's the infrastructure folks. And it involves a lot of tooling and hardcore engineering, right? Yeah, there is a component of that, but the story is much bigger than that. It's the why we're doing it. And why we're doing that is so that we can optimize flow through our value streams. And, I think it gets lost in the conversation because a lot of times the work that is going on to increase the DevOps capability or build DevOps is very often focused around the automation. And when we're working so hard on building those capabilities, we sometimes lose sight of the more holistic end-to-end value stream. So this is just a reminder that we're doing DevOps in order to increase flow through the entire value stream from end to end. And it's not just us talking about this, it's all the thought leaders around DevOps, the people who invented DevOps and are still the thought leaders today, the Gene Kims and the Mick Kirstens and the Jez Humbles and the John Willises and the Dr. Nicole Forsgren. Everyone's talking about value streams, so we can't lose sight of that component.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. If you read books like the DevOps Handbooks or the Phoenix Project and so on, it really focuses on that. And I think that is an important thing to start off with. I like this picture because it has this quote that DevOps isn't optional, it's only a question how efficient it is. As in the understanding that we're doing it in some way today. And so DevOps is somehow about making that process better because we probably have some way to go from an idea to production, right? Right,
exactly. So everybody's doing DevOps to one degree or another, right? Because if you're in business today, and if you're a software shop or if you're delivering a technology solution, if you're in business and that's your business, then you have DevOps. It's just a matter of how efficient it is, right? You have dev people, you have ops people. It's just a matter of how closely they're working together and how efficient value stream is.
Yeah. And so that sort of leads into, and of course, talking to you here, we want to sort of move into the direction of the SAFe framework, but I think it's also kind of general to say that there also is this notion of a continuous delivery pipeline, and people are talking about CI/CD, for instance, as a part of DevOps. But again, I think it's powerful here that you're showing that it's not just, as you say, the automation of the deployment process that is important. It's so much more. And if you look into this picture, for instance, on what we would include to a total continuous delivery pipeline.
Right. So the continuous delivery pipeline is very central in SAFe. It's right there in the middle of the big picture, and notice that we have the Agile release train right on top of it. So we're sending a very clear message that the Agile release train, in other words, that team of teams, everybody on the Agile release train working together, are collectively in the business of building and continually optimizing that continuous delivery pipeline. That is the implementation of the value stream, if you will, right? That's how we move product from concept to cash, using the Agile release train as the team of teams to get us there. And that means that we move those ideas through continuous exploration, continuous integration, continuous deployment, so that we can release on demand and deliver value, measure that value, and feed it back into the intake cycle. So very central and SAFe, continuous delivery pipeline, and that's our representation of that value stream concept, right? Where everybody needs to be oriented to that value stream, and the way we accelerate delivery through there, build quality in and build security in and de-risk that whole delivery stream is by applying DevOps practices. Yep. So notice that CI and CD are in there, right? Of course, we're not going completely off the reservation and saying that continuous integration and continuous delivery and continuous deployment are not part of SAFe DevOps. They absolutely are. We're just extending it. We extend it upstream and we extend it downstream to cover the entire value stream from end to end.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's central, as we say, to when we talk about sort of the definition of DevOps to also go into this continuous exploration, as we say, it's actually the whole process, and also it's feeding back, and we're getting back to that concept, of course, again, and maybe so this picture is also showing that automation, yes, it's a part of it, but there are also so many other parts that are central to get this in place, right? And there are different versions of this in the DevOps community, and this one is a SAFe one, and I think it's basically the same as most of the other ones, maybe with some tweaks, but it's still, I would say that it's representing what the consensus of the DevOps community would say is important for DevOps, right? Yeah,
it's very closely aligned to the core model that's being used in many places in the DevOps industry. So we didn't invent this; we kind of co-opted it from the DevOps movement, if you will. And we noticed that people in the DevOps community worldwide were already thinking about capabilities beyond automation as being very important to successful DevOps implementation. It wasn't just about picking the right tooling and going shopping for shiny objects and putting them in place, right? Automation is a very key component of DevOps. We can't really realize the end state of DevOps without a significant amount of automation. We get that, but it's not the end all be all of DevOps. We need to think about culture, right? Do we have a culture of continuous delivery? Do we have a shared mindset throughout the entire value stream? Does everybody know what we mean by DevOps and continuous delivery? And is everybody in the value stream doing their part to enable continuous delivery? Because it's not just the machines that are doing the work, right? Lean flow and
also it goes back to this like tearing down the silos type of thing, right? That we feel that we share the responsibility for the end result, right? It's not just for the code, it's for the business outcome even, that we're working together. And I think that's such a key component, right? To have that culture right in the middle.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. A lot of things we do in DevOps require shifting a lot of things left. We're shifting quality and testing left. We're shifting knowledge of the infrastructure environment left. We're architecting for operations, and we're architecting for continuous delivery. We're shifting security left, right? So by shifting a lot of these concerns and practices and knowledge left, we're crashing through those barriers and creating more collaboration across teams. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, this kind of started as an industry movement. CAM was the original approach, and then lean flow was added by Jez Humble several years ago, and then an S was tacked on the end. So I think the latest industry representation of this was CALMS, CALMS, the S being sharing, and we took that and we thought, well, we like this model, but sharing is built into culture and it's built into everything we do in SAFe. So let's call that built in. We took that opportunity to add recovery in there because our ability to maintain stable environments and to be able to recover from production issues was super important, not only to us, but the industry as well. So we put the R in there to emphasize the fact that it's not just about getting product into production and then starting over again. We're getting it into production, we're measuring the value, and then we're sustaining that value by making sure that that product and that solution is recoverable and stable over the long haul.
Yeah, and I think that's an important addition, and also sort of it's easier, as you said, enable low risk releases, as in if we know that we can recover, we might be able to do some more risky stuff because it's not that risky to go back. So it's an important part of it, especially if you focus on stuff like mean time to recovery instead of uptime. It's sort of the recovery is really important to get back to a state where we're still delivering to our customers, right? Even though the last deployment might not have worked as intended. So
that's right. And I'm glad that you mentioned MTTR as a metric, that mean time to restore, mean time to recover, as a key metric, right? Many studies have shown that your ability to reduce mean time to recover is directly linked, is directly positively correlated with your ability to move through your pipeline fast, right? So it's an indicator of DevOps maturity and continuous delivery maturity. Yeah. So we've got to be thinking about what we're doing in production to maintain that value. And MTTR is one of those key metrics we use to drive success. Yeah.
I also think, so me coming from being a developer in my last life, or a long time ago anyway, but it's like you're getting sort of the nerve and intensity into your work, right? When you feel that you share the responsibility, and what I'm actually coding now is going into production, and I need to know the whole flow of getting there and understand what's going to happen, how this is going to be operated, and be a part of looking at those measurements, looking at the application actually working, and also contributing to architecting recovery strategies and so on. So I think that is really a part of embracing the DevOps mindset that is really rewarding as a developer as well.
Exactly, rewarding and challenging, right? And speaking of shifting left, one of the concepts that's shifting left, and pretty hard, and in a lot of ways controversially, is shifting responsibility for production outages left into the dev teams. Yes, and I see this happening a lot as folks are getting really serious about managing value in production environments and their ability to recover from outages and issues. Is giving the pagers to the developers, right? If you build it, you also support it. And, that can be controversial. It can be a culture shock when you do that, but it's shown to be one of the best ways and fastest ways to get quality built in up front. Yeah, definitely. And I also like sort of the Google approach to that, to say that
you can give away your pager as a developer in the development team. You can actually hand over the pager to someone, which they call the site reliability engineering team, but only if you can prove that your application is stable in production, have CI/CD and so on. So I think that is really like sort of the next step even in that shifting responsibility to understand that you have to do the work in the development team to secure that everything is working right.
That's great. I love it. Yeah, let's hold each other accountable for good work, right? Let's make sure that the work is complete and accurate and that we have working agreements between the teams.
Yeah.
It's a great approach.
Really. But also after sort of introducing this, we talked a lot about other aspects of DevOps that are really crucial. It is in the end, of course, also highly technical, right? So there's a lot of things to learn and to get into, and we have things here like version control and containers and cloud computing and CI/CD and testing and metrics and dashboards that we, of course, think of when we think DevOps. So we shouldn't forget about that only because we're trying to focus on the things that are not talked about that much, of course.
Yeah, and let's admit it, this is where DevOps gets really, really fun.
Yeah, yes.
Right, this is where it's fun to be an engineer. It's fun to be on the leading edge in a lot of cases with DevOps. And even though we're 10 years into it, it feels like everything I do that when I have an opportunity to do hands-on work with the technology, actually doing DevOps, it's really fun. But even though it's we're kind of 10 years in, the technology is moving so fast and innovating so fast that it always feels fresh. It always feels like I'm on the leading edge learning new things. And this is where if you're a developer, an engineer, whether you're on the dev side, on the ops side, or the infrastructure side, or the architect side, if you're a maker, if you're a tinkerer, if you love the technology, this is a really fun place to be. Yeah.
I totally agree. And that's one part. I mean, I sort of entered DevOps because no one else in the team wanted to set up the production server, right? So I sort of became the ops guy a little bit out of necessity. But then applying really like the developer mind to it and trying to automate as much as possible and sort of following the trends from having your own hardware in some data center to moving to the clouds in virtual machines and then into to containers and we were really early in discovering and testing out Kubernetes and working with that technology. Yeah, it's really fun times to work with this. I really agree. But I wanted to sort of shift into to the question we sometimes get is that, all right, so DevOps, we get it. It's great if you're maybe a greenfield company that building a new product, but what about us then? We're working in really large companies. We already have existing systems. So I think we should dive into that question a little bit. And I want to start with the State of DevOps report that comes out every year. And I think this is also showing some one of the major principles of DevOps basically is measurements. And the community really went far in measure if DevOps is successful, right? So that's why the State of DevOps reports are coming out for like, I don't know, 5-6 years now.
Yes, since 2012, we've been following the reports, and last year they shifted. So now they're being sponsored by Google Cloud, whereas they were sponsored by Puppet Labs. Right, Puppet Labs is still publishing a version of this of the State of DevOps report. So now we have kind of two to manage. All right. Right, but it's more information, so it's great. But it's results like this that have me addicted to DevOps. Before I joined Scaled Agile, I was in the consulting business. I was helping large companies transform, right, using DevOps and Agile as the tools to get there. And I got more and more into DevOps because more and more we were able to show results like these by bringing DevOps thinking, DevOps practices, and putting tooling in place. And, you know, notice how many digits there are in these results, right? How many decimal places? Right? These are huge numbers. We're not talking 2x increase, or, you know, we're going to improve by 10% or 15%, like a lot of organizations have been trying to do for years and years and years. We're talking order of magnitude improvements here in velocity and quality and stability. It's just, it's crazy how effective these techniques can be. And these results are real, right? These are not made up.
Yeah, so, I mean, as you said, usually there's something like, yeah, we got a 30% or 50% improvement in something. And now we're looking at the numbers like 100 times better. It's, and I think that we were talking earlier about a point in these reports. They haven't just surveyed like Facebook, Google, Spotify. They surveyed real companies, right? Or like big companies, existing companies. And so we see in these numbers that it's possible to do this type of transformation in our current organizations, right?
Short answer, yes.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to unpack there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, short answer is yes. But you know, I'm really glad that you picked this slide to show, because it's you know, slides like this are money slides, right? And they're all over the place. And you know, DevOps has a lot of reports that have graphs that look like this, charts that look like this, touting the benefits of DevOps with all of these big numbers, right? So charts like this, you know, come off as very unbelievable, right? Can we really get gains like that? And so they seem unbelievable, but they are at the same time highly defensible. These come from real organizations with real technical debt that are really big and have a lot of challenges to move through in order to get these kinds of gains. So yes, we can start doing DevOps in large enterprises with a lot of legacy X, right? Legacy fill in the blank. We've got legacy technology, we've got legacy mindsets, we've got legacy processes, we have regulations and compliance to think about. Yes. These numbers come from those kinds of enterprises. And I know that this report, this State of DevOps report, is primarily derived from the results at large enterprises with a lot of legacy X, fill in the blank.
Yeah, so I think that's an important point when we continue the conversation, that others have done it and it's possible to do this type of transformation. And to sort of driving the point on, I think this quote is quite good, that you need the whole organization on board to be able to do the full DevOps transformation, right? And it's coming back to that we need to look at the whole value stream. Everyone needs to collaborate. It's not just DevOps or technical people. And that sort of segues us into SAFe, of course, which is your home domain. And I think this was sort of a fun slide that I saw you had in another presentation, where like, where's DevOps in SAFe? It's almost like, where's the customer in SAFe? It's somewhere in the picture, right?
Yeah, right. Ouch, by the way.
Yeah. But
they can get old wounds.
Yeah. But as you pointed out, then I think that if we switch to this one, it's sort of everywhere, right? Because DevOps work is not just a word or like a slide somewhere. It's actually how we do work in our larger organizations.
Yeah. So if you're looking at the big picture, and if the previous slide, especially if you're just looking at the big picture, looking for DevOps, you're going to need to squint a little bit and maybe hunt for it. Yeah.
Yep.
But there, you know, we've got Waldo down there in the lower right-hand corner next to, and I know that the resolution is difficult here, but we've got those calmer balls, those 5 balls to the right of Waldo with the label DevOps underneath it. That's what you would click on to get more in-depth guidance on DevOps and learn really about our approach to DevOps. So at this level, it might look like DevOps is an afterthought or something that we bolted on late in the game. You know, it's more about everything else, and it's just a little bit about DevOps. But like Fredrik showed on the next slide, DevOps is really baked in. It's everywhere in SAFe. You know, that DevOps icon is really just the tip of the iceberg. But once we dip beneath the waterline and look into the guidance, we see that there are references to DevOps and continuous delivery and those skills and practices everywhere in the framework.
Yeah, so and I think that's important to remember when if you work in an organization that tries to adopt SAFe and maybe you're learning about big group planning and how to do teamwork better and so on. If you're not touching on DevOps concepts and so on, like maybe you missed something in your strive to try to adopt the principles of the framework, right? It's you have to dig into those things to get the results you want out of using SAFe, for instance.
Yeah, so you know, one of the messages here is that DevOps is not optional in SAFe. If you're doing SAFe, then you are implicitly implementing DevOps because you have to do these things.
Yeah.
And you know, like we said before, everybody's doing DevOps now, whether they know it or not, or like it or not. They have some version of DevOps at play in their organizations because they have a delivery pipeline, they have a value stream, they have customers, they have products that they're moving through some kind of a delivery pipeline, right? And you know, DevOps addresses all of that from many different angles. So DevOps is just baked in, and we have those practices and techniques and principles baked in, and they sort of spider out into all of these other areas.
Yeah. So that's important to remember, especially if you're working within some sort of SAFe context, that you should be doing some DevOps by now. And if not, it's time to investigate what's happening, right?
Yeah, and if you look closely here, you know, and especially those of you who are familiar with the big picture and familiar with SAFe and can interpret these icons, you know, we're not only crossing a lot of functional domains here, but we're crossing roles as well.
Yep.
We've got different teams here. We've got technical practitioners that are within some of these blue circles, and we have non-technical people. We have RTEs. We have architects. We have business owners. We have system teams, we have communities of practice and shared services teams, all thinking about what it means to be continuous with delivery and all doing their part to contribute to continuous delivery. So yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah, in a way you could actually maybe say that the release train engineer who is trying to sort of optimize the way that the release train is working is also somehow a little bit of DevOps value stream engineer type of person who tried to just optimize that as well on organizational level, even though most of the technical work is done in the teams or the system team and so on.
I absolutely agree. And I absolutely love that point of view. And that's one of the reasons that it makes me very proud to be able to say that, that RTEs are some of the biggest fans of our SAFe DevOps course. Yep. And there are RTEs who are SPCs who do a lot of training who really love to teach the class because it's our current SAFe DevOps class focuses more on the mindset and the value stream orientation. Doesn't go deep into the tooling yet, although we're working on follow-on content that goes more into technical depth, right? But our current offering really focuses on the foundational thinking, the mindset, and that holistic thinking across the entire value stream that makes arts successful. We want to make sure that they get off on the right foot as a team of teams thinking about DevOps in the right way. And so it arms those RTEs with a lot of great knowledge and a course with a set of activities that can really help get everybody on the art aligned toward this thing called DevOps.
Yeah, and that, I mean, I know that you are the architect and creator of the DevOps course that is in SAFe, and what strikes me when I'm teaching the course and when I first took a look at it, it's really like a workshop for the art or for the organization to understand where are we, so we're doing DevOps right now, but we don't know about it. And what's our situation? Like, how bad is it in a way? Like, I think that's a beautiful way of trying to introduce the DevOps concepts to people to really understand their own context.
Thanks, I appreciate that. I was co-creator of the course. There were collaborators. But I had a lot to do with it, and it was a fun class to build. And I remember very early on in the design phases of the course, we thought about how technical we wanted it to be, and where do we start? Where do we enter the DevOps story for people? Do we lead with technology? Do we lead with value stream mapping? Is it going to be workshopy, or we're going to have technology in there and do hands-on activities with a cloud-based delivery pipeline, running labs and that kind of thing? Well, we had those discussions, and it was very clear that we needed to start at the beginning. And we just went back to the guidance that was all over the DevOps movement, right? We went back to the books, we went back to the blogs, we went back to the keynote speeches and the conference presentations, the technical talks from the people that we love in the DevOps industry, the thought leaders. And the message was very, very clear that if you're starting out with DevOps, you need to start with a shared mindset and bring people together cross-functionally and have a look at your value streams. So that's what we did.
Yep.
And
so
it's the result is always kind of cathartic. I don't know if you see this in your classes, but in many of the classes that I've taught, there's a lot of bonding that happens. It seems like the more people that get into that class from across the value stream that may not normally have an opportunity to get together and problem solve, really have a good time with it, and those teams start to bond in interesting ways.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I mean, the public courses where you mix people from different companies and contexts, those are great. Like, people are really learning from each other when you get there. But when you go in and do it with like one art, for instance, that's, as you say, like, it's beautiful to see that people are starting to communicate and they go out from the room with that sense that, all right, we know where to start. We had no idea that our inability to write unit tests were affecting testing so much, and that's why we're always late. Now we know what to do, sort of. So yeah, I think that's really crucial to do an exercise like that together and really start your journey on breaking silos and working together. So that yeah, that's really great. And we're you were coming to that, like, if should we start with the technical stuff? Should we start with value streams? And we're doing sort of an add-on to the DevOps course here in Stockholm, where we add an extra day where we dive in a little bit to the technical stuff as well. So you sort of can follow up the whole journey there. I don't know what you think about that, sort of adding more technical stuff to the SAFe DevOps course.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. So I love that you're going in that direction. We have many partners who are going in that direction too, and a lot of our trainers and coaches out there who bring in SAFe DevOps as a 2-day class know that they're delivering some new concepts, right? And so some learning is done there, but it's the practice and the application of those concepts that really matters. So they're bolting on their own offerings and creating their own workshops, creating their own boot camps and dojos, whatever it is, to help those teams actually upskill, right?
Yeah. Into
DevOps. So yep, it's brilliant. We love that you're doing that, because that's what our customers need. And right now we have an effort internally within Scaled Agile that I'm leading to bring more of that technical guidance into the framework and into kind of an experimental course, but
Yeah,
more
that
on that
sounds
in
great.
later
Yeah.
months.
Yep. The more, the better, I think, when it comes to that. So skipping ahead a little bit. So what about if we then have legacy systems in our organization? Is it possible to do any type of DevOps? And of course, it's a sort of rhetorical question, but I think that some people are coming with those concerns. So what would you say is your experience when starting with maybe not a greenfield, but like systems that have been there a long time, and maybe need some love.
Right. We love those legacy systems, right? They run the business. So yeah, it's always interesting working with legacy systems and going through a modernization effort with them, right? So I think one thing that we've learned as an industry over the last couple of decades in modernizing legacy systems is that for the most part, big bang transformations don't work. You got to take them one piece at a time, one slice at a time. So we highly recommend, choosing the systems carefully, balance the level of risk with your need to modernize those systems, and take them in relatively small bites. And with a legacy system, whether it's a packaged application or a highly complex distributed architecture, maybe it's a monolith where everything is connected to everything else, and you've got tightly coupled components everywhere. Whatever it is, take it one step at a time. We'd like to do things incrementally and learn from each one of those increments so that we can get better and better at driving results as we go along, rather than creating a big bang initiative. So I'd say that may be motherhood and apple pie, right? And a little bit too obvious, but I think it's worth reinforcing.
Yeah, I agree with you, because what comes to mind when you see an old system might be that, okay, let's just rewrite it. How hard can it be, and so on. And I've seen so many of those initiatives just fail after maybe even years of trying to replace legacy systems. The only type of that kind of replacements that I've seen somewhat successful would be like using the strangler pattern, for instance, which with the actually writing your new application on top of the old one, and just start by channeling all the traffic through to the old system, and then bit by pieces replacing the old system by having this layer on top of it, as in strangling the old application.
Right.
And
the strangler pattern is a good one. It's tried and true. It's time tested, and it's a great way to evolve legacy systems. So yeah, highly recommend that approach for those kinds of systems. Another pitfall that I see some companies fall into when they're modernizing, and they want to do more of a rewrite, re-engineer the existing system. We've got all this talk and hype about containerization and microservices these days, right? And if you're in the DevOps business, or if you're thinking about going DevOps, then the subject of microservices and containerization and Kubernetes is going to come up. And I see many teams that are tempted to just rewrite their systems as microservices, or convert them into microservices, because everybody else is doing it, right? But we have to remember that microservices is an architectural pattern that works in many cases, but not all cases. So there are many types of systems that you don't want to convert into microservices, because what they are and what they do, right? And we have to think about what the pros and cons of moving toward a microservices architecture are, right? Versus and what the costs of highly distributed architecture are, with many nodes across or many components across many different nodes, and what that means from a maintenance perspective, and the cost of making calls through that kind of architecture, latency and response times and that kind of thing. If we have a system that's highly transaction oriented, and we need to be able to run zillions of transactions through that thing, we probably don't want to spread those transactions or rely on a microservices architecture to grind on those.
Call between everything. Yeah, it's
so
I agree. It's really a trap where you don't really understand what the architecture is meant for when you're building it. So yeah, it's good to point out. And I usually see that the biggest problem with legacy system would be that the testing is poor. Like you don't actually know what the system is supposed to do, and the automatic testing is just not there. And that's also like a kind of a tedious process, but worthwhile to add those tests as you go, at least in my experience, to sort of secure your way into working with this legacy system over time and getting more confident that you don't break anything when you work with it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Also,
so with legacy systems, I think you're just going to have to be more careful, right?
Yep.
We're dealing with brown fields, not green fields. We don't have blank slates. We can't just do whatever we feel like doing.
Yep.
We've got to manage those legacy systems, and we have to make incremental improvements to them while they are still serving our customers. So there's risk in that. We need to be thoughtful and careful about it. So strangler pattern is a great way to approach those kinds of systems. I highly recommend domain-driven design as a discipline toward moving into re-architecting systems. This is a way to start thinking about the architecture of a system through the lens of your business, declaring business domains and putting like components and like data and like behavior together in the same areas of the application, kind of walling them off and bounding that context, and starting to reorganize your legacy applications from the inside out, incrementally, systematically, in the least risky way possible. So there are techniques, there are ways to move through legacy system modernization that sort of de-risk the process and lead you through it step by step, that can move you toward continuous delivery. You know, what you might end up with at the end of the day is not microservices or an award-winning, innovative, DevOps architecture that you would write a book about and everybody would consume, but you'd have a differently architected application that serves your business a lot better than it does today.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, if microservices are sometimes, I think, used because it forces you to do modular build-up of your application. But as you say, that's something that you can do actually within your application if you just sort of do it. so that's, as you say, trying to understand what's actually happening from a domain perspective and reorganizing your application without changing the architecture paradigm into microservices. You still have that ability. So that's
right.
Good. And also most of those systems can actually be, when it comes to like how are we deploying them, how are we testing them and so on, we can automate a lot of manual steps. So just moving in that direction without actually changing that much of the application can have huge benefits and wins. So that's also somewhere to begin with our legacy system. So getting them into CI/CD in the shape that they are today, basically.
That's right.
And then the next question would be, but actually we're doing mainframe. So now I guess we can't do DevOps here, or can we?
No, here we go, right? Here we go. Yeah, so let me just tell you how I feel about mainframes. This is a picture of my laptop. It's actually the laptop that's right here on my desk that I'm doing the Zoom call through. It's the top of it. And you know, in DevOps, a lot of us like stickers. And this just happens to be my sticker infested laptop, but right up there in the top, I've got that sticker that I'm very, very proud of. I love mainframes, and I do. I love mainframe environments because of what they are and how they have proven over the decades to really be solid performers in our enterprises, right? So let's respect them for what they are, respect them for what they have done for us, and respect them for how critical they are to the business, right? Let's not go in like cowboys, guns blazing, thinking that we should tear these mainframes down and replace them with something else, right? I think that's the wrong approach. Respect the mainframes for what they are. They're very, very powerful. They're very necessary, and they're very good at what they do. And the teams that operate them, manage them, and continually update them and improve them are rock stars as well. So I've become a huge, huge fan of mainframes and mainframe teams in this digital age because I have been pleasantly surprised to see that many of those environments have been, and many of those teams have been the most sophisticated, the most high performing teams and systems I have seen in the DevOps space and the Agile space. So I had a different assumption going into it when I started my consulting practice and started to go in. But I quickly learned that these mainframe teams have their stuff together. They know what they're doing. And then many of them have already figured out how to do continuous deployment, how to separate deployment from release, and how to employ capabilities like feature toggling and rapid rollbacks and fix forwards, and to do incremental releases and even deploy or release changes in these mainframe environments multiple times a day, right? Far ahead of the application development teams that are trying to do this in Java or Python or Swift or some other language. So what I've seen in the field is a lot of times these mainframe teams are leagues ahead of the application development teams and become coaches to those app dev teams on how to run their applications.
Yeah, I've seen the same, actually, explaining what DevOps is to a mainframe team, and they were like, yeah, we always done it like that, or we're sort of operating our own application. We're the ones dealing with that, and so on. So I definitely agree. And then, of course, I mean, we can always introduce sort of the learnings on having a continuous delivery pipeline, for instance, like CI/CD servers, maybe automate a little bit where it's missing. So, but I've also seen that it's definitely possible to work with it. And I don't know what's your experience, but the tool vendors are also sort of jumping on the DevOps train here and working with getting the tools up to speed as well when it comes to deployment and so on. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's so much going on in the mainframe space today around continuous delivery and DevOps and being agile that, for me, it's really not a concern. As far as I'm concerned, it's taken care of. The challenges are met. It's a matter of, picking the right capabilities that are needed for that mainframe environment and making sure that it's, maybe not retrofitted or re-architected or engineered for continuous delivery, but it's optimized for continuous delivery. They have the capability to do this. Yeah. And I think one of the primary challenges that I've seen facing mainframe teams and environments is not in how the mainframe performs itself, but in how the mainframe interacts with other applications and systems in the ecosystem. So to me, a lot of times it's a matter of opening up that mainframe and making it accessible to other applications through APIs. So maybe you need to expose some of these mainframe routines as APIs so that other systems can consume them.
Yeah, and also cleverly work with maybe new teams who are using other technologies and the mainframe. And sometimes when we say, okay, we need this new business capability, and the mainframe team says, oh, it's going to take a lot of work to get it into the mainframe. Maybe we can see how we can build now an ecosystem. As you say, we have APIs into the mainframe, and how can we build this new feature with both new and old technology working together? Mm-hmm. So I see that opportunity as well. So we're running almost an hour here. I think we should allow for some questions. And if anyone want to stay a bit longer, at least I can stay and answer some more of them. I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit to the questions part. All right.
Dirk, my name. Question there. Often when I heard DevOps, it's what you also got into that we need to implement microservices and so on. But if you look at, and you also stated DevOps, everybody has DevOps because you get the products out to the market, don't you? So my question is, when you look at the more or less the big companies you have into, where do you start usually? What should you tackle on? What are usual parts? It's probably not, okay, we should rewrite everything with microservices, because then it takes years before you see the gain. Mm-hmm. Where more or less, what patterns have you seen? What is more or less the main parts where you should start that you see the gain quite soon? What is your experience there when you have been in these big companies?
Yeah, so to be very concrete, in my experience, there's some opportunities that come up again and again and again and again and again. Usually the testing cycle is broken in a big way, especially with large systems and large enterprises. A lot of times I see that, we can't grind through the testing fast enough. We test as much as we can until our delivery date arrives, and then we push to production anyway, knowing that we have deferred defects, and then we stick around for a while cleaning up those defects. So usually the testing cycle is a big bubble in the delivery stream that causes a lot of friction. So some places to start there are not only with test automation. I would never lead with test automation because usually teams don't have the right tests in the first place. We don't just want to be running bad tests faster. We want to improve the tests. So that's where we've seen behavior-driven design, BDD, and test-driven development, TDD, and test automation working together as a trifecta that can really start to remove those testing bottlenecks and inject quality into the value stream at the same time. So BDD, TDD, and test automation together can be a great place to start. Also, in my first DevOps implementation, we started very small because we had a small budget and we didn't have a whole lot of support, but we knew we had to do something. So we addressed the actual release event. It was taking 18 hours to release our product. And it was a big bang thing causing a whole lot of pain. So we knew that if we could solve that, then if we could reduce it by half, let's take that 18 hours down to a 9-hour window and give everybody a day back, right, over the weekend so they can spend it with their families. Well, what we did was we automated the testing cycle and we were able to take that 18 hours down to 5 minutes. Now talk about order of magnitude gains, right? We were able to do that in less than a PI, or in about 2 months. We were able to do that with some starter teams. And as soon as we showed that, we had people lining up around the block to be customers of our pipeline as a service concept. There's also continuous integration is a great place to start. Put a CI server in place to manage your check-in procedure, right? But in order to have good CI, you probably need a good branching and merging strategy. So a lot of people start with re-architecting their branching strategy, right? Maybe not moving all the way toward trunk-based development, but reducing the number of branches and making sure that the repositories can accommodate faster check-ins and can integrate with the CI system to manage more of that continuous build and continuous quality checking we need up at the dev cycle.
Yeah, and that's also my experience, really. So one of the first, and this is before even DevOps was something, I just put another computer under my desk as a developer, put Jenkins on it, and made sure that it was building every check-in, so that we got a notice at least that the build was not working. So it wasn't discovered, because otherwise it could go like a week before anyone even discovered that the main line is not working anymore. So all those type of small things that you can do, like add a CI server to the mix, start to do more testing, automates, do scripts for things that are manual today. It's a great way to start. And if you do the mapping, then you would actually see where it hurts the most. If you want to choose where to start doing the mapping, it is great.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Absolutely. Fully agree. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the question.
It's 5 past, so if there's no other question, I think we should wrap up. Let's see.
Last call.
That's cool.
Bar's closing.
Yep. All right. In that case, thank you so much for coming to this webinar. I hope you learned something, and please contact us if you have any questions afterwards. We're happy to serve. And thank you, Mark, for coming to us today. It was a pleasure having this conversation.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks, Fredrik. And thanks to everybody else. Good luck with your DevOps transformations.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.